having just one call to make, not to bail you out of jail, but to get you out of a tense or drastic situation, who would that call be to? I'd venture to guess most of you would call it a dear, trusted friend, or most would just call a family member, someone who they knew would answer that call. But have you ever wondered if the call would be answered? Meaning, if you made that one call, if somebody would pick up. Well, for starters, who even picks up the phone to answer a call nowadays? I mean, who does that? My name is Isidro Salas, and welcome to 10,000 Tacos. Thank you for joining us today on this, our final episode of Season 2. For those of you new to the show, well, you're in luck. Although this is the Season 2 finale, there are more episodes like this in the rearview mirror. If you like this episode, you can go back and download previous episodes of the show to get more of what the show is about. And for those of you returning listeners, thank you for coming back and continuing to support the show. A special thanks goes out to those of you who pass the show on to others. Thank you very much for that. And with that, let's begin with this Chardonnay problem. GPS, Global Positioning System. Yes, this wonderful piece of technology. There is no doubt this technology has made life a whole lot easier and efficient for many of us. But for me, it makes me a little sad. Like many of the latest technological achievements that take away or replace the human element, GPS is one of those things that did such a thing. I'm a little saddened that the art of giving direction has gone away. Truly, it was an art to give people directions, how to get to a certain spot. When I was a kid, I would memorize the street patterns, the setting of the sun, the north, the south, the number of streetlights it would take to get to a freeway or a major intersection, the approximate distance, all. I would do that all so I can be the person who people would ask where to go or how to get there. I wanted to be that person. And then GPS comes along, right? And it kills my vibe. I'm not bitter about it, but I do have this. Here's the Chardonnay problem. For all the advancement in this technology and the access to it, considering the technology is about 50 years old and it has been used commercially since the mid-90s, why the hell does it still say crap like this? In a quarter of a mile, continue going straight. What the hell is that? I mean, are those even directions? Just go straight? I mean, there is no art to that. Like, really? I mean, it's like that uncle that everybody has that always states the obvious. Every family gathering. You know, if you look up, you will certainly see the sky. Duh, mother effer. I mean, can we by now have a GPS that tells us or gives us some common sense instructions? I mean, can we? No? It's just me? In a quarter of a mile, continue going straight. Whatever. Chardonnay problem. Thank God this is the final episode of the season. Oh man, if I keep going at this rate, I mean the show will get canceled, you know? But you never know. This might be the last ever episode because of these Chardonnay problems. Today in the show, I want to tell you who the person I chose to call to bail me out of what seemed to be a certain inevitable disaster. I mean, it was going to happen. And you won't be surprised who it is. Now, this is a time when I was like in my mid-30s, a time when I volunteered to make menudo for about 20 plus coworkers. And in the process of preparing it, this, what seemed to be a really simple thing to do, that I thought, it started to get out of control. The menudo was not coming out right, and I was running out of time. But we will begin with this. Quick question. Have you ever felt that after watching a YouTube video, you can do whatever it is that you are watching? Has that ever happened to you? For example, those DIY, do-it-yourself projects, especially those in the home improvement space. You know, those how to build a deck in your backyard, or add benches, or build a new functional closet in your house for your wee apartment. Come on, admit it. No one is going to judge you if you do watch those shows and think, oh, I could do this. No one's going to judge you. Yeah, right. Way before YouTube, I had that advantage. To watch someone do something every day and think I can do it also. Remember the flipping tortillas episode where I sat there and watched my mom do it so that one day when I got my chance, I'd do it. And it was that simple. I mean, that's how I learned how to flip tortillas with my bare hands. Everything else is that simple. No, it's not. But I had the luxury of watching my parents. Though it wasn't by choice, it was still a luxury to be in that spot. I'm certain that that's why so many people think I'm a natural taquero, and a successful one at that, as if I was born with a tortilla in my hand. But it wasn't like that. I wish it was that easy, but nope. I hate to disappoint you. It is not that easy. First time I figured this out was in my early 20s. I, along with a couple of friends, decided to go get our own apartment. We were all the same age and thought we were all ripe with maturity and that we were ready to face the world, that big old world before us and all of its challenges. And that's what college does to you, which is not a bad thing. On one particular weekend, both of my roommates told me they were going to be out for several days. And I got excited. I was going to have the whole apartment to myself. I know it's super nerdy, right? As if my parents were there, you know, like, got it all for myself. No. So I decided to invite a lady friend over. I asked her if I could cook dinner for her. And of course, that is not all I wanted to do, right? I mean, you know, to impress her, cooking abilities, and maybe that would open up some other opportunities, if you know what I mean, right? Wink, wink. So, lady friend agrees, and I'm like, yeah, you know, all excited. Well, anyway, I know that sounded creepy, but anyway, she says she's going to bring over a bottle of wine, and right away I'm like, in my head, what the hell is that? I'm a beer drinker at this point. I'm a sophisticated Bud Light expert at this point, and wine is nowhere in my radar. But whatever, I figured. Again, my eyes are on another prize, and all I have to do is cook up a nice dinner And, things are going to work out the way they're supposed to, right? So I call up one of my buddies who works for a local grocery store, and I ask him, what should I do for dinner for this date? What should I make? And he asked me, well, what is she like? And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, did you ask her what she would like to eat? And I'm like, no. Should I have? Should I have asked her? And he's like, yes. This is my early 20s, remember? So I'm like, oops, what do I do now? So let's just play it safe, he says. Just a nice little steak, some potatoes, and a salad on the side. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I know steak. I mean, it's like carne asada, right? It's steak. And I'm like, perfect. That'll be easy. Nope. Carne asada and steak are two different neighborhoods. Probably the same city, but definitely on the other sides of one another. So here I go. I purchase what I think is a steak, and then it was a disaster. I bombed the hell out of it. The steak looked like the bottom of a huarache. I mean, the potatoes were raw, they were hard, they had no flavor. I think her jaw almost broke by trying to bite into it, and I even effed up the freaking salad. I mean, how do you F up a salad? Yup, that's me. I did that too. Yeah, you can tell by now, lady friend never called back. And I was like, what the hell went wrong? I spent all these years watching my parents cook, and I thought it would be easy just to pick up a pot and cook whatever, and voila, and I'm done. Nope, that is not how it is. I still had a lot to learn, obviously. So, sometime after that, I remember this one day, I was at one of my brother's house, and I was eating the ribs he had just made. And I thought, man, this is really, really good. I mean, I was just, oh man. And I was like, this is like restaurant quality food. I was very impressed. And I was like, how did you learn how to do that? And he said, I just started cooking. And I'm like, And then it hit me. What's stopping me from doing just that? There's nothing stopping me. So from that point, I started learning what the importance of meats, cooking temperatures, seasoning, complementary dishes, sides, sauces, direct heat, indirect heat. And I was just learning as I was going, asking friends, watching shows, reading cooking articles. I mean, I just started learning. I was getting pretty good, and I was getting more and more confident. Except I made a minor mistake. I did not bother to ask my mother for anything as it related to Mexican food, and especially the tacos and burritos and the meats. I just didn't. So remember when I said I worked at a winery, right? And every year around the beginning of fall, there is what is commonly referred to as crush. It's an annual harvesting of all the grapes. And it's not just picking the grapes. It's all the processing of the grapes, from the stemming, crushing them, separating the juice from the stem and all that. And eventually putting them in barrels or somewhere where it's going to ferment. And eventually racking them up on whatever. And it's a huge operation. And it is hard. Some people, they say, they work up to anywhere from 16 to 20 hours a day. And they'll do this for up to 6 days in a row. Some may not even take a day off during this. So it's intense and it's very arduous work. At the end of harvest, most of, if not all the wineries will host a big lunch or even a dinner event to celebrate the last truck, the last barrel, the last of the grapes. It is really a really big event, right? And on this, my second harvest, when I was working at this winery, this was my second go around. This was year 2. And even though I wasn't working the fields, I wasn't working the presses or any of the cellar work, I wanted to show my appreciation and I wanted to contribute. So I asked my boss if I can cook menudo for all of the cellar crew on a particular day. And it was about 20, 25 people. And I suggested menudo because the majority of these guys, and there were some gals, but the majority were all Mexicanos. They were all Mexicans and they know menudo. So I had developed good rapport with them, and I figured, hey, if I could give them menudo, they'd like that. So my boss reluctantly agreed. That's for a different episode, but he wasn't happy about it, but he said, okay. So I go and ask my mom, how do you make menudo? And she kind of looks at me with a kind of weird face and, chuckled a little bit and asked, well, why? Are you thinking of making it? And I'm like, yeah, I want to learn how to make it. And of course, I didn't tell her that I was going to cook it for about 20 or so people. Now I know I should have, but that little pride bug, got in the way. I didn't, just too pride. So then she tells me, okay, and real quick, if you grew up in a Mexican household, you can relate to this. But for those of you who are not familiar, there is no such thing as a recipe in a Mexican kitchen. Meaning there's no ounces of this and take that. No. Sure, you'll see shows that have a Mexican chef and they'll give the but those are mostly for Anglos. In Mexican kitchen, nah. When you're trying to get instructions for a meal, you'll get all kinds of instructions. It's like a narrative, and it may vary, but I mean, just to give you an example, it'd be like, oh, un puñito de esto. You put a little bit of this. Oh, it's one salt pinch or a 2-finger process. You got to put that much in there, and there's never the same. It could be the same dish, but it's never the same, and it's just confusing as heck. So the reason I say that is because, there's a lot to listen and there's a lot to do. But so my mom goes, getting back to the story, my mom explains to me how it is, of course, how to do it. And my dumb butt doesn't even write a lot of this stuff down. Again, it's that damn Aztec gene that, the pride that I don't need to write this down. Yeah. So I wrote down what I thought was important, but not what I needed to do. The actual steps and timing of all that good stuff, that I thought was not important. It was. So anyway, the day comes, I begin cooking the menudo at around 3 a.m. And the plan is to then take it to work already cooked so that I put the finishing touches at the kitchen at work. It's a winery. They host events, and so they have a big, nice industrial kitchen. It is hella fancy. So the plan is to start serving everyone by noon. So I'm thinking I have plenty of time if I arrive at around 8 a.m. with the meat of it already cooked. Well, sure enough, before I knew it, the menudo starts to get clumpy. And as I'm adding the red sauce to give it the color, I realize there's something wrong. So I kind of start to panic, right? Because I look up at the clock and it's like 10:30. And it's not looking like what menudo should look like. So I go to taste it and it tastes okay. But the broth, the main part of it is not looking good. Panic mode in full effect. I start to lose it and I think, oh, you know what? Maybe I could just scrap it and go buy some pre-made menudo already at this local store, which would have cost me a whole boatload of money, right? I mean, for 20 people, it would have cost me a lot of money. But again, I have my freaking pride to protect. I cannot let this crew know that I don't know anything, right? Because it's pride. But Then I thought, well, I still have another option. I can call my mom. And I'm like, the other side of my head goes, but I'm in my mid-30s. I can't call my mommy every time I'm in trouble. Like no, I can't. Meantime, it's getting closer to noon, and finally I just suck it up. Get on the phone and I call my mom. Yes, I call my mom. And moms, they always pick up the phone. Thank God for their generation, right? Because they think every time the phone rings, it's important. And this was. But man, I tell you, I'm so glad that moms do this, because if there was anybody else, they probably would have just sent me to voicemail. But so anyway, she picks up and I tell her my dilemma, and I ask her what I should do after I describe what's going on. And she explains that I didn't do some of the key things that she had told me, and that's why it's clumping up. And I'm like, but I'm starting to panic, right? So then I ask her what to do to fix it. And of course she says, let me wake up your dad and I will be right there. And sure enough, she was at the door within 15 minutes, right? Comes in with several pans. She has a baggie of some stuff like herbs and some other spices and then she also comes in with this freaking paddle. Yes, a paddle like for boats, right? It's a freaking paddle. It's like 3.5 foot paddle, and it's the same paddle I had once asked her about many years ago earlier, right? That I used to complain that she keeps everything, right? She just holds on to everything. And I pick up this one paddle and give an example. I'm like, Mom, why do you keep this paddle? What do you need this for? Right? I was complaining why she keeps everything. And sure enough, yep, it's that same paddle. So she's about to help me with. It's the same paddle. Oh, thank God. Because I thought she was bringing this paddle so she could whack me with it for not listening to her on her original instructions. Those instructions that if I had followed correctly would not have gotten me in this mess in the first place. But anyway, she does this, she does that. She's like in full crisis mode, man. She is just giving instructions. She's yelling at me. She's telling my dad, do this and do that. And I mean, she's just on point with everything. Even my dad's getting yelled at, right? She's telling them, get this and get that. And I'm like, oh, poor dude. He had nothing to do with this. Oh, man. So anyway, I look up at the clock and it's a little after 11 a.m., right? It's like 11:15. And I tell her about the noon time limit, that I failed to mention. It was for all these people at lunch. She does not even acknowledge me. She is not even phased. She's just going about it like a matter of fact, like, full crisis mode, on point, man. She's just doing what she needs to do. And she just keeps going as if she was operating the catering truck and she had 20 people ordering their own specialty plate. That's what she was doing. She was efficient. She was accurate. She was direct. She's got this get stuff done attitude. Nothing is in her way. She's just freaking focused. She, and it just reminded me, just like she taught us. She wasn't teaching us how to cook. She wasn't teaching us how to run a truck. She wasn't preparing us on how to run a taco truck. She was training us on how to run at life. And that when life throws you a cow, you make carne asada with that cow. And here I am in my mid-30s, still needing direction and, of course, a bailout. And she did. She bailed me out. I had one call to make, and I made that right call. So she finishes up fixing my problem just before noon. I mean, within a couple of minutes. My mom hooked it up. The menudo kicked ass. After I took it out to the break room and people started serving themselves, I took a peek inside the lunchroom as most of the cellar workers had already filed in and they were already eating. And you could see it in their faces. They were conversating about whatever, and they had smiles on their faces. They had very familiar smiles because they were having this meal. They were having these conversations and eating over a good meal, as if they were at home, as if their moms had cooked this menudo. They were right. A mother had cooked this menudo. It just so happened to be my mother. I want to close out this season with a couple of things. First, you don't have to wait for Mother's Day to say thanks to your mom for being a mom. You should consider doing it today. And second, I want to dedicate this episode to my dear friend, Rene Garcia, whose mom is dealing with her own medical issues. I'm thinking of him and his beautiful mother, wishing them the best during these trying times. And lastly, I want to thank the many of you who support us by continuing to come back and recommending the show to others. Thank you so much. I don't do this without you guys and your support. We will be back later in the year. Until then, I'm Isidro Salas, and this is 10,000 Tacos.